As you all know by now, there's a new version of Nano Banana, and it's honestly ridiculous, mind-blowing. But I'll be real, before I saw the examples and got my hands dirty with it, I wasn't overly excited or hyped about it. It's not that I didn't think it would be good, because I did. I just didn't realise it would be this good. Because once you start testing it and understanding it, you realise it's not just about making the images look good. It's starting to get better at stuff that makes an image feel real, such as lighting, reflections, materials, and consistency. I've tested it myself and I've watched other people really push it with prompts, and the takeaways are clear. It's starting to understand how reality works, not just creating images that look nice. And that's the exciting part. If you want highly stylized images, I think Midjourney is the route still. Just like ever so just. I'd probably still generate that strong stylized base there and then feed it back into Nano Banana just to level it up, refine it, and push the variations. And honestly, I've really found myself in Nano Banana 2 more often than I expected to be. And that's because I feel like the pace has shifted. So here's a roundup, what it does insanely well, where it sort of falls over, and why people are taking it seriously. First up is quality and resolution. It can generate in 4K, and that's a spec that you're probably used to hearing in general. But for AI, it's a different story. If you're doing any sort of work, whether that be posters, prints, thumbnails, or anything with detail, starting off at a higher resolution is only a good thing. Crisp images, less upscaling time, and less messing around with artifacts as well. And once you've used these proper high-res outputs, you really don't want to be going back to that low resolution because you feel it instantly. But I think the bigger shift isn't in the 4K, because that will eventually become standard across the models anyway. For me, the biggest shift is what's happening underneath the hood, with the understanding and structure. Nano Banana 2, or Nano Banana Pro as it's formally called, is working alongside Gemini 3. That matters because you can actually reason through what you're asking it for. Instead of just generating nice images, you can push it structured outputs, such as diagrams, storyboards, and simple infographics. This means it's far more likely to give you something that's logically arranged and usable. And this is where it becomes more than just an image model. It starts becoming about the bigger picture. Models are actually learning how the world around them actually behaves. And if you've ever worked in 3D rendering, you'll know exactly what I mean. Materials, reflections, Fresnel, refractive indexes, specular highlights, all those sort of invisible rules that make something feel believable. And when an AI model gets those type of rules correct more often, you're not just getting prettier images, you're getting a system that's learning the logic behind the realism. And that's why Nano Banana 2 feels like such a step forward. Another big update is the prompting and control. For me, Nano Banana 1 could do consistency better than most, but it felt like it was always being a bit stubborn. You tweak a prompt and it wouldn't always respond in the way you wanted it to. Or you'd ask for a new angle and it would try and resist in some sort of way. Nano Banana Pro is noticeably more responsive. So when you change a prompt, you see meaningful changes. When you ask for a new angle, it's much more likely to follow, and it pretty much does it every single time. This is important because the pain point isn't about generating one good hero image. It's more to the point about keeping character consistency across multiple different shots. You probably want a wide shot, then a close-up shot, then an over-the-shoulder shot, and then a reverse angle. And to maintain the story, you still need to be able to feel that you're in the same world. Now, Google says it can keep up to 5 characters consistent. While that's not perfect in times, and I've also seen times where there have been more than 5 characters in a scene and they have been consistent throughout, it's certainly usable enough now that you can build up options quickly, pick a direction, and iterate from there. Now, let's talk about the hardest point about AI so far, and that would be text, logos, and type. So if you already do any of the design work and you've played around with any sort of AI, you already know the struggle. What tends to happen is that you ask for a clean set of type on a sign or whatever, and what you get back is a load of gibberish. The letters are all in the wrong way or facing the wrong way, and it's not readable. Now, the reason it's so hard to recreate this is because typography is so unforgiving. Proportions and stroke weights matter to the tiniest of details. And if you distort a letter form in the slightest of ways, it stops being that word, that logo, and that brand. This is why you should never stretch or warp type until you learn how to break the rules. Now, Nano Banana still isn't replacing those proper design tools just yet. It's not outputting perfectly crafted vector logos that you could just send off to a client. But for AI standards, It's shockingly good. It is probably the best out there. I've seen people create UI screens, poster layouts, signage, simple logo concepts, and you can actually get far more legible text more often, and that's massive for early design stages, or if you're doing some sort of mock-ups. And paired with the 4K output, your text holds up pretty well, especially when you zoom in and look in at the finer details, which makes it way more practical when working with. But where it really impressed me was the lighting and reflection tests, because these tests show the rules and the theory behind creating these realistic images. One of the best examples I've seen came from the guys over at the Denoise podcast, and they were using stills from Whiplash. So the test was basically just swapping the environment, relighting the scene as if the subject was in a new environment. And you could pretty much throw this into any AI image generator, and it will pretty easily swap out the background for you. But the real challenge is whether the subject's lighting changes correctly. The tell for this was checking out the hotspot on J.K. Simmons's head. So under the harsh direct light, if you have a bald head, you tend to get a bright hotspot due to the reflection off the surface. But under a cloudy, overcast day, the light is softened, and therefore the hotspot should disappear or become less prominent as the light is more diffused. So older models and rival models would be able to change the background and give you the clouds, but you still keep, the harsh spotlight on the top of his head. This creates a disconnect between the subject and the environment, as if they shouldn't be together. But Nano Banana 2 handled the lighting more than convincingly. It managed to handle the softer highlights, more believable tones, to make the whole scene feel more believable. It wouldn't have been able to do this without that sort of understanding behind it, I believe. Then they decided to push the test further. So another hard material to control and recreate is reflective materials. If you're filming them or if you're creating them in 3D, they always seem to cause problems. So think of chrome, glass, and other complex materials as such. Now, it's not flawless, but you can see how Nano Banana 2 handles it much better. And it also adds different sort of sci-fi elements that the other models didn't. And to me, once again, this points back to the same theme. It's getting a better understanding at the physical rules that create the realism. Now weaknesses, because it's not quite magic. Visual prompting can still be a bit sketchy. It can take an image and generate variations, but faces can slightly shift and get a bit too polished in areas, which is a problem if you want exact likeness consistency for realism and realistic people. So it's great for the overall feel and the overall look, but if you want the exact like for like, I'd just be a bit careful at times. Complex camera compositions can still sort of trip it up. Over the shoulder shots, strong perspective, hands in the foreground and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, you can absolutely get great results with it for sure. But I'm not saying you're going to go create a feature film with it right now. As you can still see the slight anatomy warps, the weird proportions, more often than you'd like. So for right now, it's incredible for concepts, or even just if you're doing graphic design, it's incredible for creating images for stuff like that, posters, etc. You get really clean images that you can work on and develop. Or if you're doing stuff for social media, it's great for that sort of stuff. To further that, if you're looking at visual development or just initial stages and conceptual stages of world building, it is fantastic. It's quick, you can iterate over and over, and you could get loads of ideas out pretty quickly compared to previous workflows. But obviously, like all things, it really depends on what you're sort of working on. You've got to consider how complex and unique is your problem you're trying to solve. How much of an understanding does the AI have? And how much of that have you got to break down into smaller bite-sized pieces for it to calculate correctly? But one last point just to mention and just to point out, the filters are clearly tightening, especially around likeness. You'll notice it's much harder to create direct copies of real people or even artificial people you created, and then you put it back in to try and create real people, and it just won't do it. Or even just pushing certain identity-based transformations. This is probably only going to become harder over time. So if your work consists of a lot of portraits of yourself, other people, or your clients, or anything that just needs an exact identity, I treat this as a bit of a grey area that's getting developed and a little bit unstable at the moment. Not because the tech can't do it, it's just because the safety rules around it. But that's where something like Comfy UI would come in, and that is a conversation for a different day. So overall, Nano Banana 2 is probably the best image model out there at the moment. Even with the new ChatGPT model got released, Nano Banana 2 still takes the win, I think. Now, it doesn't win because it creates really good images. Well, technically it wins because of that. But the reason it creates good images that don't feel so AI, don't feel so fake or plasticky, problems we've all encountered before, it overcomes that because it's starting to use reasoning paired with its image model. It's getting a better understanding as to why this looks real. Materials, lighting, reflections, structure, consistency. And that's the bigger story here. It's the race to AGI, to general intelligence, to creating that world model. And just getting better images is just part of the stepping stone. The question isn't only, is it better than the last model or the last month's worth of models? It's, what does this unlock for people? What can people utilize this particular image model for? It's not just helping designers, it's helping loads of different people in so many different ways. But for us, it means faster storyboards, clearer, better images, more crisp images, faster social media production, and models creeping towards deeper world understanding, eventually feeding into training environments and playgrounds that push towards AGI. So I'm curious, what use cases are you using it for? There's honestly so much to explore within Nano Banana 2 and just not enough time to do it because there'll be something new on the horizon, no doubt. So I'd love for you guys to reach out, drop in the comments, tell me what you're working on and how you're getting along with it. Let me know if you want me to try any prompts on it, and I'm sure we could dive deep into that on a future video. So if this video's helped you, please drop a like and subscribe. I've been Raf, and I'll see you in the next one.